الحمد لله الذي له جنود السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله العليم الكريم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فاحكم بين الناس بالعدل ولا تتبع الهوى صدق الله العظيم. Respectful honorable friends, mothers and sisters listening at home. A common dilemma that many Muslims face or do inquire and question regards is when it comes to various masail of deen wherein there is ikhtilaf amongst the ulama. If you recall, a couple of weeks ago, over the Jumua, the topic was with regards to us relying too much on YouTube and other social media in order to acquire knowledge. And how much we rely just on those sources of knowledge. And one of the harms of it is that in doing so, we can very easily get confused, and getting confused in a manner wherein we have different opinions in front of us, and we are unsure which opinion is the correct one, or which opinion should we be accepting. In this, what happens is either that a person will do the correct thing of inquiring and finding out exactly as to what should be done, or what does happen then is that a person starts adopting whatever they think makes sense to them, or whatever they feel themselves is more appropriate for them. In doing so, either we start using our own limited understanding of deen, and we choose what we think that, no, this makes sense. Whereas deen is not all about, and the various masail, the various rulings of deen are not based upon what makes sense to people and what makes sense to us. They are principles that ordain these, and it is the implementation of these principles that matters the most, and not whether it makes sense to us or not. So it is not a matter of just whether something makes sense, so it makes sense to us, so that is the opinion that we should be taking. Or that because it doesn't make sense to us, so we're not going to take that opinion. So that is one that we start choosing in that sense. Or the other is that we start doing ittiba of our nafs, ittiba of our hawa, meaning our desire. And this is exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the verse that He said it to you. That وَلَا تَتَّبِي الْهَوَىٰ, that do not follow what your desires are. فَيَذُلَّكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, otherwise that will mislead you from the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what tends to happen then, that we start following our desires. And by following our desires mean that we pick and choose. And the medium of the social media platform or YouTube or so, on there you have scholars of various different backgrounds, of various different fiqh as well. And in doing so, it is very easy that we could start adopting the masail and taking masail of a scholar who may not be of our own fiqh. And this does not mean that they are on wrong. It doesn't mean that what they are teaching or what they are preaching is incorrect. But it isn't what our own fiqh may be, or the fiqh that we are followers of, which we do taqleed of. And in doing so then, a person will pick and choose what he thinks is easy for him or what makes sense to him. And in doing so, a person will start practicing talfiq. Talfiq is something which the ai*imma, the fuqaha are unanimous, that aside from certain occasions or circumstances, in general, talfiq is something that is not allowed, it is not permissible. And what is talfiq? Talfiq is that when a person adopts or chooses, so a person may choose a masla from one imam and then he chooses a masla from another imam and he picks and chooses, or mix and match. You might have something where you can mix and match, so we will then mix and match one masla from this imam, one masla from that imam, one masla from that imam. So what we are doing is we are mixing and picking. And this is something that the ai*imma, the fuqaha have mentioned that this is not permissible. An example, a couple of examples is, and especially when they're picking and choosing, and this is something that I touched on the Wednesday Majlis, picking and choosing in such a masail, wherein there is difference of opinion, and that too when it is related to one ibadat. For instance, one masla, a difference of opinion between Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and that of Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi with regards to a person's wuzu. According to Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi, tartib, sequence in wuzu is necessary. And according to Ahnaf, it is not from the necessities of wuzu. That is one ruling. The other is according to the Ahnaf, when it comes to making wuzu, masa of the head, it is imperative, it is wajib that at least a quarter of the head, rubu ras, quarter of the head, masa of quarter of the head is done. According to Imam Shafi alayhi rahmah, that is not, a quarter is not even necessary. Even if it's just a few strands of hair, that is sufficient for masa to take place. Now for instance, a person, whilst doing the wuzu, they did not do the wuzu in tartib, in sequence. For some reason or the other, they changed the sequence, they didn't follow the sequence when it came to doing wuzu. So in this way, that is the ruling of Abu Hanifa, that is fine, your wuzu will be correct. But then in doing so, a person had tied a turban. And because they tied the turban, somebody maybe who doesn't know how to tie the turban, somebody tied the turban for him on the day of Eid, and now he's got his turban on, he doesn't want to spoil his turban and move the turban. And now he needs to do wuzu, but he has to do quarter head. Now in order to do quarter head of a Masa, he's going to have to move the turban. So now what does he do? He said, no, let me just take a few strands. Just a few strands and do Masa of a few strands. Imam Shafi rahmatullah allows that. If a person wants to combine these two things, that he just do wuzu on few strands, but in doing so he's going against the Ahnaf. And then on the other side, he takes that of the tartib, the sequence, takes the Ahnaf and forgoes the Shafi. In doing so, the ai*imma of that opinion that his wuzu is invalid. His wuzu is not valid. Because in doing so, he is taken and he's chosen in such a manner that he's taken something from one imam, forgoing something else which is essential according to that imam. And in doing so, what actually a person has done is that he has chosen what is convenient for him. Like in this circumstance, it was convenient just to do masa, so brief masa. So that was convenient, so a person took the ruling of Imam Shafi alayhi rahman, not on the basis of dalail or proof or so, but on the mere basis of what is easy for him to practice upon. Similarly, for instance, you have a Maliki and a Shafi'i. According to Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi, dalak. Dalak means when a person needs to rub the organs you do wuzu on. The dalak is something that is essential, you have to do that in wuzu. And according to Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi, it is not from the wajibats of wuzu. And similarly, according to Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi, Bismillah, reciting Bismillah is essential. Imam Malik, it is not essential. So here now a person started doing his wuzu, and while doing his wuzu, he forgot to recite Bismillah, so he said, oh, no, it's not necessary, Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi. And then while he's doing his wuzu, he's just doing his wuzu normal without actually rubbing those organs of his body. So in doing so, saying about char, so here he follows Shafi rahmatullahi in this matter, in this reading. So in actual fact, what has occurred and what does occur here is that a person is not following deen and shariat, but a person is actually following their own whims and fancy here. They are following that which is convenient for them. And this is just a couple of examples. There are many such examples. For example, a person, he leaves his home, he's in the state of wuzu and he leaves his home. And it so happens that he touches his wife. And by touching his wife, he becomes a Hanafi. That look, by touching the wife, the wuzu does not break. According to Imam Shafi rahmatullah, the wuzu will break. But then while he's coming to the masjid, his hand hits somewhere. And he has a scratch or he has a cut. And now he starts bleeding from that cut. Now when he starts bleeding from that cut and he can't, and he doesn't want to go and renew his wuzu, now he says, I become a Shafi and that doesn't break my wuzu. So where it suited him in one act of wuzu itself, he followed the ruling of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, and where it suited him, then he followed the ruling of Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi. This is what you call talfiq. And the Imam unanimous at talfiq, carrying out talfiq is impermissible. The person's wuzu will not be permissible. Why? Because the person's wuzu will not be valid. And the reason for this is that this person is not following the fiqh of Imam Abu Hanifa or the fiqh of Imam Malik or Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi, but a person is following the fiqh of his nafs. He's following his nafs and he's doing what is easy for him. And that such a person is regarded to be a fasiq as well, who follows what they desire is what they want to be halal or haram. Now this is one thing that comes about when there is difference of opinion amongst the ai It is very important that we need to stick to the fiqh that we belong to, so that we are not carrying out talfiq and we are not following the whims and fancies of our nafs. Then we face with that dilemma that there can be occasions wherein there is a difference of opinion and a difference of opinion amongst maybe in general scholars or among scholars of our own fiqh as well, where something may be regarded to be permissible, others may regard it to be impermissible. And this is where people become confused and they ask, now who do we follow? Which route do we take? Some scholars say it is permissible, some scholars say it is impermissible. There might be certain matters wherein scholars may say that look, it is permissible, some may say it is avoidable, but they're not saying it is impermissible. But there will be cases wherein some may say permissible and some will say impermissible. Now bring contrast here from permissible to impermissible. What do we do in those circumstances? And one example, for instance, just briefly because we don't have much time, something that I touched on the Wednesday Majlis, something that we have a craze of at the moment, cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, which everybody is wanting to know, is it halal, is it permissible or is it not permissible? And again, this is a prime example wherein there are those ulama who say that it is not permissible and there are those who say that it is permissible. You have both sides to cryptocurrency. There are those scholars who are of the opinion that it is fine, that everything is halal by default. And until there is no reason to make it haram, you cannot make it haram. So this is also halal until you cannot make it haram. So they are of the opinion that it is permissible, it is fine, let people go ahead with it. So that is one view that you have on one side. Now these are those scholars who have also made their tahqiq, they have made their research, and according to their research, they have that opinion that it is fine to trade or to invest in cryptocurrency. Then on the other side, you have those scholars who have that opinion that look, it is not permissible. It is not permissible. And they have the reasons to say why it is not permissible. And the reason why, and people are getting frustrated, they're asking why there is a difference of opinion by the sellers, is it permissible or not permissible? The reason why there is this difference of opinion is that this is something that has come about newly. It is something that has come about newly. And not only that, but it is evolving very fast as well. But there are a lot of grey areas to it as well. Because it isn't something that is so clear in front of us. There is a lot of grey areas to it, and because of those grey areas, it is something that you cannot, and this is the duty of the ulama and the fuqaha. The muftiyani kiram, that just for the sake of convenience for people, to jump and hasten in giving a verdict with regards to permissibility or impermissibility of something. For that reason, there are many reputable Darul Ifta who have still not come to a conclusion with regards to issuing a fatwa to say it is permissible. To say, because there are many grey areas to it. And I mentioned some examples in the Wednesday Majlis with regards to cryptocurrency in that. There is grey area to it. With regards to whether it is mal itself, is it a currency or not? Does it have a value to it or not? Is there a ta'amul usage of it or not? There are many grey areas there. There is also gharar in it as well. There is a lot of ambiguity with regards to it as well. There's many issues. And this is not the occasion to go into the ruling aspect of cryptocurrency itself, but because there are so many grey areas behind it, it is becoming difficult for the ulama to be unanimous and give a verdict that yes, it is allowed and it is permissible. So there are those who have said it is permissible, there are those who have clearly said that as it is and the information that we have at the moment, it is impermissible. And there are those who have that opinion that currently, of what we have in front of us, it is difficult for us to very easily, with full understanding and with sadr, with contentment as well, where we are now within ourselves, we feel satisfied that yes, it is something that is allowed, and until we are not in that stage, we cannot give a fatwa that it is permissible. This is a situation, and this is something that is understandable. And the reality is, my difference is that even those who say it is permissible, even they are of that opinion that as believers we should abstain from it because there is a lot of grey area behind it. There's a lot of uncertainty behind it. It is a huge hole for fraud and deception as well. Many have had their fingers and a lot are more beaten from it as well. Many have lost a lot from it. When that is the case, and there isn't a form of a security guarantee for it either, then it is something that till then a person should, as much as possible, try and abstain from it. As much as possible, abstain from it. And that is the root of caution. Now coming back to the actual topic that I was mentioning, that where we do find ourselves in this type of a dilemma, where there might be one side scholars saying that something is permissible and one side there is scholars that are saying it is impermissible, then what do we do under those circumstances? Remembering the example I gave earlier on of talfiq, that the first thing is that we need to be avoiding talfiq. Talfiq is where we are picking and choosing. So we as those who are non-scholars, what are we supposed to do at that time when it comes to someone saying permissible, somebody saying impermissible? Then the fuqaha have given us guidelines as well. And that is, one is that the prime is that look, we should not be following our nafs. And in doing so, when it comes to, now for instance, cryptocurrency, somebody is into cryptocurrency, they'll go into YouTube or just do a search in Google, is it halal or haram or not? You'll get all sorts of different articles, fatwa, then you'll have your YouTube videos. You'll have different scholars who will mention it is permissible, there are those who will say impermissible. Now again, as I mentioned to you, we are not saying that those scholars are wrong there. We are not saying that the scholars are wrong there. But when it comes to such matters of choosing between permissible and impermissible, we as individuals, our duty is that we should follow that scholar, that imam, or that scholar of that imam who we would follow all the time. And those examples I gave you of the masail with regards to wuzu, of not picking and choosing between the Ahnaf, Hanafi and Maliki, etc. So we should then, and not that because we want to invest, so now we're going to follow a scholar who is saying it is permissible, but with regard to all other aspects of the fatwa of that scholar, we would not be taking those. We may not be following the fatwa of that imam or scholar in general or other matters, but because this suits us, we will take that imam. This is called talfiq. This is not permissible. This is something that is not permissible. We need to take from that person who in general we relate to and we will accept their masail. That is one. And the other is, and you'll say that what if it comes to, if I am for instance a Maliki or if I am a Hanafi for instance, and here we find that the scholar is, scholars within us, because there are those Ahnaf scholars, Muftis who say it is permissible, there are those who are saying that it is not permissible. Now what do we do? There the fuqaha have also outlined that where there is a difference of opinion, a ta'aruz, different opinion between halal and haram, caution is in giving preference to that which is haram. Caution is in giving preference to that which is haram over that which is halal. Because you're not bound that you have to stay away from halal, but you have to stay away from haram. So where there is this contradiction, then righteousness, piety is in what? That we abstain from something rather than going down the route of just accepting it to be halal and taking that. Especially when you have a big group. One is that you might have some masail wherein unanimously, or the majority of scholars, fuqaha, may say that something is permissible. And it may be just a handful of ulama or certain ulama of that opinion that it is impermissible, but it is an opinion that hasn't been widely accepted. Not that they are wrong, they are correct as well, because they have made their research and they have come to their conclusion accordingly. So they are correct in their manner. But where there is a case wherein majority are on one side with regards to halal haram, then it is fine to go down that route. But where it is quite split, and you have this in many masail, and especially one prime example is I mentioned here is with regards to cryptocurrency. People are always asking, is it halal haram, and there's different opinion, who should be following and so on. So as I mentioned to you, when that is the case, when there is an objection here or different opinion between halal and haram, tarjih, preference is given to that which is haram. And currently with regards to cryptocurrency, this is the situation. It is very split at the moment. As I mentioned to you, many reputable Darul Ifta, Muftiyani Kiram are still not fully satisfied to give the verdict of permissibility. When that is the case, then we should show caution with regards to this. We know how appealing it may seem to us, how tempting it may be to us, but that is exactly what happens. That because that temptation and desire is there, we will on one YouTube video and listen to it, and then we understand that, look, he's going down the side of impermissibility, but put that off. Take another one. Then which direction is he going? Impermissibility, put that off. Go to another one. He's going towards permissibility. Look, I found somebody who says it's permissible. I found somebody who says it's permissible. Irrelevant, or would we accept that same is sheikh or scholar for other masail as well? Do we refer to that person for other masail or not? We won't look at those things, but what we're doing is we're just finding that which suits us and we'll go down that route. And also, my dear friends, it isn't something that is necessary for us that we have to invest in cryptocurrency, especially when it's such a gray area. Especially when we know that there are so many things ambiguous to it as well. So many masail, and that I mentioned a little in the Wednesday Majlis. You can refer to that over various recordings. But here the main masala that I was mentioning is that a lot of people become confused to when there are difference of opinion among scholars, and not knowing that now which mufti do we accept, which mufti should we go to. So one is, as I mentioned before, Fuqaha mentioned that the most important thing is, just for the mufti before he gives his fatwa, is that he does not let his nafs play a role in giving the fatwa of permissibility or impermissibility. He has to be neutral and only look towards the Shariat. Those accepting the fatwa, they need to be neutral as well. And they should not allow their nafs to influence their decision, that just because they want something to be permissible, then they choose the mufti that says it is permissible. That is not the route that we should be taking, because there we are not following that mufti. We are not following the ruling of that mufti, but what we are doing is we are following our nafs because we want it to be permissible. And then the other principle given is that where there is a difference contradiction between halal and haram, preference will be given to haram, because that is the side of caution. That is the side of caution. And the other principle given is that a person should look towards the righteousness and the piety of that scholar and that mufti. Now look at the piety within that person, the one you regard to be that this person is one of Allah-fearing and righteousness, then you adopt and take that. In this as well, this will be a difficult one, because you're not going to start judging people, and you may feel, no, they're all in the form correct. Then the bottom line is that, look, each person can make a judgment themselves. On what basis? That, look, what is it that I am looking for here? Is it truly that I understand that caution is in abstaining from something, but no, I'm just looking for that fulfillment of my desire, so I'm just finding that which suits me the most. When we eat, that is something that each person will know of themselves. And that is something that a person needs to abstain from. There may be exceptions as well, wherein a person is in a state of life and death, for example, a situation wherein a very stick and difficult situation, there Muftiyani Kiram themselves may give that verdict as well, to adopt another opinion which will come from them themselves. That is a different situation. But in general, where something is not of that nature, it is very, very important that we abide by these usuls and rules, because this is something that is happening very commonly now because of our social media and that. that we just taking and learning knowledge from any person that we find. And in doing so, we are just looking for that person who suits us the most. And unfortunately, this is a platform wherein you have many different people on there, with the title of Sheikh and the title of Muhaddith and the title of Mufti as well. Mufti as well. And when you see that Mufti Sahib as well, then they might be very different in appearances and style and everything compared to the normal Mufti Sahib that you have in your mind of who is a Mufti Sahib. But then it is not that we look at, we just look at, no, what are they saying? These are things that, yes, these seems keen to us, it seems that these things are good to us, these are the things that we want to hear, these are the things that this is the type of Islam that we would like to follow, then that person becomes our Mufti Sahib. So very, very important with regards to these things that we do not pick and choose here and there and do mix and match in deen. This is what is very important. The conclusion is that we should not mix and match in deen. Allah Ta'ala grant us all the understanding. Wa akhir da'wan.